Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast. I'm Jesse. That's Liam. We are making it further into the season. We are now 5 or 6 rounds in, depending on whether you count opening round. Liam, welcome back. What a weekend of footy.
It was actually a really cool and entertaining weekend of footy. Some close games, some upsets, which is nice. Some teams not doing that great, which is probably not surprising. But every week we get along, we find out a little bit more about the teams this season, or the reverse. What we think is true doesn't turn out to be true at all. It's such a weird game, this game. This is why I love sports, because at the end of the day, you could have a team who should be winning everything. And guess what? They just do not get the job done. So it's plenty to talk about in this week's footy, but it's a very special episode, Jesse, because you are where right now?
I am approximately 1.5 kilometres from one of the runways at Sydney Airport at the moment. And if you couldn't hear that, no, that wasn't Zach Merrick going and burning some rubber in celebration of their Friday night win, the Essendon Bombers. No, it was probably a 737, probably an Airbus taking off as well. So lots of interrupting plane noises this week, which we obviously apologise for. But you know what? At the end of the day, it could be a lot worse. You could have no episode whatsoever. And Liam, I learned something about the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast during the week.
What did you learn?
I actually learned something.
What did you learn?
The Dodgy Punts AFL podcast is built for runners because pretend I'm a runner. And whenever I put the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast on for my run, because yes, I am vap enough to want to listen to my own voice, I run faster. Now, I'm convinced that's because I want it to end sooner. So all I'm saying is, if you want to beat your personal best on the track, chuck your AirPods in, chuck the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast on, you'll burn the turf. You'll be sorted.
Oh, it's good.
That's what I've learned this week. Have you learned anything else this week, Liam, or have you had a stoic week?
Oh, look, it's always a stoic week for me, Jesse. Always pretty on the level. But I tell you what, I also listen to this, but for different reasons. Not because I want to hear my own voice. It's because I have to make sure that the whole thing sounds good. And if you're a runner or just want something to listen to on the bus, you can definitely do it. Or in the car, you got a long drive, listen to the Dodgy Punts podcast, get your footy fix from the weekend, hear about the games you didn't actually watch. And we'll try and give you a bit of a rundown with a little bit of jest. And you can get in touch with us, join the conversation at Dodgy Punts on Instagram and on YouTube as well. Available Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Where do you listen to your podcast, Jesse? You can hopefully find us there.
Well, I listen via carrier pigeon. I listen by Spotify because I'm an adult.
That's impressive.
Now, on the topic of socials, Liam,
yeah,
I've actually got some good news.
What's that?
Because I've been hand-delivered a new segment for this show. And it won't be a recurring segment. It will be an ad hoc segment on this program.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm calling it Letters to the Editors.
Okay.
And Letters to the Editors is when we get specifically sent to either you or myself or the actual Dodgy Punts accounts themselves, get sent incredibly nuffy takes from AFL supporters. Now, this could be directly to me saying, hey, Jesse, you're wrong. Josh Tracy will win 45 Colemans. Or it could be things that they've seen in the wild. Now, remember, it's a safari. We don't provoke people. We just watch from a distance.
That's right.
This episode of Letters to the Editor has potentially could be starting off on absolute fire.
Okay. And I love this. I had no idea. I had no idea this was coming. I'm so excited.
I have been made aware.
Yeah.
I have been made aware that there is someone out there in the wide world that believes Harley Reid is already a top 10 player in the AFL.
Oh, wow. Hey, listen, he's good, but
that's very silly.
Top 10's pretty silly. He's going to be there one day. I don't doubt it. But right this very second, goodness me. And who was this? Who is this person? Are you going to name and shame? Are you going to say where you saw this, where you heard it?
No, but we're on safari, so we don't poke the bears lest the bears respond.
Sure.
But it is worth mentioning. So please, if you do see anything in the wild, it can be on Facebook. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ban Facebook comments because that's too easy. No Facebook comments. Mm-hmm. But anything you see on Reddit, on Twitter, on Instagram, you know what? If you just hear someone say something really dumb at the shops, we can take that. Just don't make it up. Don't be that guy because you're not that funny. But send it in. Let us know. We love Letters to the Editors. We love our safari. We might rename the Not talking to anyone.
Okay. That's fair.
You're not the only person that listens to this podcast, Liam. I also listen to it.
That's true. That's at least 2 people. That's why I thought you might be speaking to me. Goodness me.
That would be really tragic if we were the only listeners.
No,
and I was just talking to ourselves via this weird weekly time capsule.
No, thankfully not. Thankfully, we do have some listeners checking us out every week. And if you're new, thank you for joining us. We want to hear your comments as well. If you want to be that nuffy, we can watch from afar from our comments. Leave us a comment. We want to get involved with you and you with us and make this harmonious podcast. Well, harmonious is probably not the right word to use with you here, Jesse, is it? Probably not. Probably not.
No. No. Harmony's overrated.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I like constructive chaos. I prefer.
Mm-hmm. I know you do. If I know anything about you, Jesse, it's constructive chaos. Yes.
Yes, that is true. We have some news to talk about, Liam. And isn't there so much news? There's actually not that much news. We'll get through this fairly quickly.
Mm. I thought you were going to start talking about the news. Or was
you
that
jumping in here, or am I doing the whole podcast myself?
No. I thought you were about to lead on. You were about to lead on to something. It didn't sound like a cue, Jesse. I've been doing this a while. It didn't sound like a cue. All right,
that was a far cue.
That was like halfway through a sentence. You stopped talking, and I was like, "Oh, is he going to go? Am I going to go? Who's going to go?" It's okay. I'll jump in, shall I? Where do we start? Do we start with Finlayson and his suspension? Do we start there? Is that where we start? Because I think this is actually quite a big development within AFL, where someone has been banned and suspended from playing for 3 weeks, based not on head-eye contact, not on tripping, not on whatever, but for something that they've said. So Jeremy Finlayson took accountability for some homophobic remarks he made last week, and the AFL have slapped him with a 3-week ban for said action. Now, I'm actually quite a fan of this. I think if you're trying to, obviously we don't want to get rid of banter in the game. Banter is a really important part of any sport. You watch cricket, they live for that stuff. Every single bowl, someone's talking in someone's ear. You need that part in sport, but there's got to be a line. So 3 weeks ban. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this ban? Fair? Too much? What do you reckon?
I'm very much in the fair column. I think it's the right decision. There's 2 things I want to talk about here. And they're 2 things that I personally found quite contradictory with this. For the record, I think 3 weeks is about right. Given we don't know extensive broad details, which we probably don't need to, I think based on a slur, I think 3 weeks is about fair. What you could argue more, I don't think you want to go less than 3, which is where my first point comes in. Where was the accountability for Alistair Clarkson in the preseason for
I knew it.
What is fairly commonly understood to be a homophobic slur?
Yes, I knew you were going to go to this. Yeah, yep.
I don't like this. I don't like this grading of homophobic slurs or slurs in general. It's a slur is a slur.
Mm-hmm.
You've either said it or you haven't. You've either made a derogatory comment to someone about a characteristic, whether applicable to them or not, or you haven't. So why are we getting suspensions versus 3 week suspensions? And as much as I don't agree with a lot of the dribble the Players Association come out with, I actually think they're onto it here. Why are there 2 separate rules for people governed by the same general accountability? That doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. Like, I know there might be the argument where it's like, well, a player has a direct impact on the game, I suppose. Like, coaches have an impact on the game. We all know that. But I don't know if they're kind of coddled a little bit more, or there is a different level of expectation. Whether or not there should be is a different conversation altogether. But it definitely seems to be that the coaches are their own little group, the players are their own little group, and they're not usually held to the same accountability. Also, it's precedent, right? So for a player, you can give player suspension of games as a punishment. Suspending a coach for 3 games, like, realistically speaking, is that a deterrent, or does there have to be a different punishment for a coach like Clarkson? Like, what was? I know it's a suspended sentence, but what happens if he reoffends? Is he out for games? Is it financial? Like, do you know what the ins and outs of that is?
I believe it's 2 weeks. I believe it's 2 weeks, I think.
Okay. So my question is,
2 weeks suspension.
You've got a coach. You've got a coach there. Now, we've seen this time and time again where a coach will be let go mid-season, sacked, something will happen, they're sick, and then the standing coach comes in and that team absolutely dominates. So is 2 weeks for a coach actually worthwhile, as it is for a player? should it just be a case of a different path? Like financial is the only thing I can really think of outside of saying, thanks for coming, Alistair, or whoever says this, but your time is done. You see this in other industries. If people get caught doing, and we've had this conversation a lot, especially with the drug stuff from the last couple of weeks. If someone in our workplace does something, they get fired. Why is that not a similar tact for something like this? That's probably my biggest kind of my biggest gripe with the whole thing. It's like, just because they're a sports personality, a coach, someone who's in the media, in the public attention, they have to be treated differently. That's where I'm kind of like, not about it.
I tend to agree, and I will just add on to that, the wording around the suspension being that it would have been more had Finlayson not been so forthcoming in the aftermath interested me too, because that is a really big diversion to what Clarkson was slapped with for, again, a similar comment. So you're almost looking at two separate extremes in the space of, 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is another example of the AFL making it up as they go along, and it seems to be now happening more and more than we've seen in recent years, certainly since COVID, that the AFL is just making up their rules as they go with even more impunity as they have in recent years, in my opinion.
Well, I guess it's probably something quite new for them. I'm guessing. Like I don't remember a time in the last 15 or 20 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, or no, you can't correct me if I'm wrong. You can't correct me if I don't remember, and you say, no, Liam, you definitely do remember, because I don't remember. But tell me, has there been a time across the last 15, 20 years where someone has come out and been admonished for making a slur? I can't think of any. So this is like new ground for the AFL.
Well, and I'm going to be very careful here, because we don't open up another can of worms. But the only like for like I could think of would be the Collingwood fan with Adam Goods. That would be the only, I think,
sure,
comparable.
But
I'm talking
that
like immediately springs to mind.
I'm talking like within the game though. That was a very well publicized kind of incident. But I'm talking like on the field, on the pitch kind of situations.
Does Tex Walker count? Granted, that was in an SANFL game, but I think that's probably your most direct comparison if you want those parameters. Now, again, he wasn't playing in that game, but he was there as a member of the football club, and he made, I think that's been proven, racist remarks, and he was dealt with. He was dealt with harsher than Finlayson has been, which is interesting. But ultimately, I don't think this is a case of... I don't think the AFL would have gone into season 2024 without any policy on this. If they have, that's a real problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, I think it's been fairly well publicized that the AFL doesn't have any openly LGBT athletes. And that's not, a criticism. We're not going down that pathway with this episode, but there has been concerns from LGBT rights groups that it is not a safe space for people with those within that sphere of people to feel comfortable in. And this potentially adds on to that now. And has it really been... It's probably been dealt with quite well here. But then you look at 8 weeks ago and you look at the contrast between Clarkson's comments, and you do wonder if it's just a case of Band-Aid solution after Band-Aid solution, like we've seen with score reviews this season, like we have seen with the tribunal suspensions for head-high collisions. I would love to be Elastoplast, because they've been making an absolute killing close to AFL House at the moment.
Yeah, I think the good thing to come out of this is that they did take action. That's good. You can't deny that. And so hopefully it does set an example or a precedent for this kind of stuff in the future, and we don't have to deal with it ever again. Like, it's just, there's no place for it in society. So Finlayson was remorseful, which is good, as he should be. But hopefully this kind of sets that benchmark. So for future instances of this, like three games for a top player for a team is it's quite a hefty punishment. So hopefully this kind of
it's a big whack.
It's a big whack. So hopefully it sets that precedent, and we have to talk about this ever again. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Moving on, unless there's anything else to add on that. Jesse, you want to move on to our next little news story here?
I'm happy to move on.
Libba. Let's talk about old Libba. So for those who didn't see it,
Yes.
Western Bulldogs, Essendon on Friday night. Unfortunately, Libba had a bit of an instance where he got quite a pretty heavy tackle, I think it was, and then played on, and then not a couple of moments later, collapsed on the field. Essendon player was nearby, called over people straight away. Obviously, I don't believe this was really noticed or picked up in the live game action. I think it all happened post game, and obviously a really scary scene. Like, you don't want to see anyone collapsing on the field. I recall Dylan Robertson back in the day when he was playing for the Saints, obviously ex-Docker player playing for the Saints, collapsed on the field, had heart issues that cost him the rest of his career. He had to give it up. Obviously for his health, good idea. But someone collapsing is never fun to see. Never fun to see at all. So, thoughts on that one, Jesse?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. My first thought was Tyrone Vickery in the preseason game about 8 years ago against West Coast when he was trying to mark a ball 80 metres away from him. And it was a bad look. And then for Luke Beveridge to go into his press conference and dismiss him collapsing as an ankle injury, I think and it actually has really annoyed me, to be honest with you. And it could have been total eclipse of the dart today. Mm-hmm. But again, we try to avoid singling out individual people in that segment. But it did annoy me here. And I do think we need to talk about Beveridge specifically because he's not having a good time as a Western Bulldogs coach. I don't think he'll be the coach by the end of the season.
No.
But more importantly, why say that?
Yeah.
Either that's a lie, which is stupid, or he's saying things he doesn't know, the whole context to, which is also stupid. Mm-hmm. I understand, having to answer questions from the press, but what's wrong with, I'm not sure, I haven't spoken to Tom / I haven't spoken to the medical staff / no comment. I don't think that's a bad answer, given we're talking about, players' health. So why come out with that? It's just bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Especially given that he coached Liam Picken, who is now a lead plaintiff in a lawsuit against the AFL for concussions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an odd thing because you'd think that the coaches and the players would go through some sort of media training, and I don't see the issue at all. And this is one thing I tell people at work as well. When I've been leading people in the past in my other jobs, and I've said this all the time, it's okay to say you don't know. You don't have to have the answers for everything because you're going to get found out pretty quick if you say something and it turns out to be incorrect. Like, it's not hard to find out the truth or find out the answer. So it's okay to not know, Bevo. And I think that was probably the worst part of it. I hadn't actually seen that side of it until you mentioned it before we started recording tonight. And I went and read the transcript of that part of his post-game interview. And I was like, yeah, it's such a weird thing to say because when someone's hurt their ankle, they tend not to collapse face first into the grass. That's not what an ankle injury does. And so even if Bevo didn't see it, and he's just assumed that's what it was because he was like obviously groggy coming off the field, might have a bit of a limp, who knows what's going on. Don't guess, because especially now with such a spotlight on it, as you bring up rightly every single week, concussions are a major part of this game. And
yes,
to the Bulldogs' credit, they have come out now and they are treating this like it was a delayed concussion, I believe. And they've said he's not playing next week. They're going to monitor him across the next few days. And see how he goes, which is good, which is correct. But yeah, it's a scary thing. Like, it's actually one of my biggest fears watching AFL and any other sport where you'll just see the play happening and then someone just falls over. Because we've seen this in football, soccer, a lot. It happens quite a bit in that game. And it would just be a horrible, horrible thing to witness, horrible thing to see. And every time there's like instances like this, I think there was even someone recently or late last year who had a similar instance where they just fell over and they just collapsed. It's scary stuff. So it's good that the Bulldogs are taking it seriously. It's a shame that Bevo decided to put his foot in his mouth a little bit and try and play it down. But hopefully Libba's okay. That's the main thing. Hopefully Libba's okay, Jesse.
Absolutely. It didn't look good for Libba. Hopefully he can bounce back and make a full recovery. Another player who didn't look good for on the weekend was Sam Taylor,
Oh,
who had
God.
a very nasty incident in the St Kilda game
Jesus.
and it had to go to hospital. It was bad, and
That was rough.
thankfully it seems for the most part like no significant damage has been done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I was watching,
which is obviously very important. So, Liam, what was your read?
Well, I watched that game. I watched that game live. I knew that I had to do some extra heavy lifting today while you were working over in Sydney this week. So I watched that game, and I like watching GWS, so it's okay. But he was going in for a spoil, and he was playing really well. He's been a really good defender for them this year, and it seemed really innocuous off the bat. Like it looked like it was a spoil. I actually thought the St Kilda player got the worst of it, and then they cut directly to a close up of Sam Taylor's face on the floor, and I was like, "Oh, that boy is not in a good way at all." And it took them upwards of 10 minutes to get him off the ground. Like they were taking some real proper precautions with him, and because it was a nasty one. It was a nasty one. And that's the thing. That kind of action and that kind of event is just part of the game, unfortunately. Like there are certain acts that you just cannot help. Like if you're going for a spoil of the footy, sometimes there's going to be some damage. You can't really combat that, unfortunately, but they're also like those kind of occurrences I think are pretty freak. They don't happen that often. It's the ones obviously where people are putting elbows up through people's heads are the ones that are the problem. But no, it didn't look good. I hope he's okay too. Like to have him sent off to the hospital was pretty severe. But yeah, he wasn't in a good way, the poor fella.
No, and it just goes to show how dangerous the sport can be at times. And, this is probably going to be a near miss in the grand scheme of things. And as a near miss, it's ended up with someone in hospital. So thankfully, Sam is okay. For the most part, it seems. Hopefully we can see him back in orange sooner rather than later.
The orange team.
Liam, I think that's most of the news, but there was one bit I wanted to touch on that actually broke on Thursday night.
Oh,
the orange team. No,
okay.
Not them. We're not talking about them anymore.
Okay.
But we are talking about Hugh McCluggage because the rumour is the money on the table for Hugh McCluggage at the moment is $1.3 million. That's an ambulance outside, by the way, if you can hear that.
Oh, yeah, they'll hear that. That's no stress.
Wee woo, wee woo.
That's all right. Talk over it. It's fine. You're louder than the ambulance, Jesse.
Very Scott Steinerish. Thank you.
Well, Jesse, I'm hollering because I hear you. Keep on going.
I've lost my train of thought. Hugh McCluggage. Apparently the money on the table for Hugh McCluggage is $1.3 million per season. That wasn't a typo. That wasn't $130,000. It was $1.3 million per season. Liam, have we really gotten that desperate? McCluggage is a quality player, sure.
Yeah.
But $1.3 million per season offers, that's almost as funny as Brad Hill still being paid $900K a season by St Kilda, which will almost never be topped as being objectively hilarious. It falls over a lot.
Get your cheddar while you can, Hugh. I mean, if you got 1.3 and they're offering you that, then never leave Brisbane. Ever. Because that's big money. Like, I don't even know if there's anyone else who still gets paid that kind of money within the AFL. I mean, what do the top superstars get? Like, is it that much? Like, I agree with you. Like, Hugh's a good player.
It'd be in that bracket.
Yeah, he's a good player, but is he 1.3 good? That's some big money. That's some big money. But then again, Jesse, I'm not on the business end of these things. I don't know. There's a salary cap if Brisbane think they've got the money to spend that much. And if they want to keep him around that badly and potentially shoot themselves in the foot later on, hey, man, that's up to them. Spend your money, Brisbane. Spend your cheese. Get yourself some huge McCluggage. Just do it. That's fine. I really don't have a problem with people getting paid. It's just it does seem like a lot. It does seem like a lot for you.
This wasn't total eclipse of the dart. This was just reporting the news. But I was quite surprised. Of all the players in the AFL, you could offer $1.3 million. That's not to say McCluggage is last on that list. I'm very, very confident that you would not give Tom Emmett $1.3 million over Hugh McCluggage. But I wouldn't have also put him close to the top of that band.
Who would you?
I would pay. I think I would pay Roy Lobb $1.3 million a year to go play at Tasmania because I think that'd be really funny.
Yeah,
And I think he'd hate it. I think he'd be miserable. And he'd be miserable and rich, but he'd be miserable. And that's fine to me. It's absolutely fine. Send Chera down there too. Can we split the money? $650
Would they be
each?
miserable? Would they be miserable? I mean, it seems like Rory would love to be the guy. He seems like the kind of person who'd love to be the guy. Tassie's lovely. Tassie's fantastic.
Okay, you report back from Burnie and Launceston and tell me that you're having a great time. Off you go.
I have been to Launceston, actually. Let me report back from Launceston.
Please.
Launceston was fantastic. It was lovely. It was fantastic. It's a lovely little place. They have a place called Shiploads, and Shiploads is like their red dot. You're probably taller than most of the buildings. That's probably true. That's probably true. But that's what I like about it. It's small. You like a small city, Jesse. You don't like Sydney at the moment. You don't like it at all because it's probably too big. It's too scary. Oh, big old Sydney. You like a small city like Perth.
The amount of times I've been dinged by food drivers on a bike. Shut up, Liam. Had enough of you already. With 25 minutes of you irritating me. Flog.
Oh, well, it's all fun and games, isn't it? I'm having a good time. If anything else, I might just turn into your total eclipse of the dart today. You might just be like, you know what, Liam, I'm going off on you, mate. I'm going off on you. Now, question, sir. Are you ready?
Yes.
I said, are you ready? Everyone, total eclipse of the dart is where I give Jesse 2 minutes to go banana on anything he'd like to go on a rant about. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm not going to say anything. He's just going to go for 2 minutes. Now, unfortunately tonight, and just a little bit of inside baseball, a little bit of a problem with our internets tonight. There's a little bit of a delay. So I'm not going to be actually able to count Jesse down. So Jesse's going to have to actually do his best to guess when 2 minutes is up. All right? Jesse, your 2 minutes begins now.
Well, we're going to try to make the best of this and just see how we go. My total eclipse of the dart for this week is potentially one of the stupidest concepts in the AFL media space, and that is redrafts. They are dog shit. I cannot stand redrafts. They are pointless. They're a waste of your time, and they're a waste of mine. People seem to forget that it's not 5 years ago when they do their redrafts, and that Team A may not have needed a fifth midfielder, and that Team B may have desperately needed a key forward. Why are we doing redrafts? Yes, it's funny when teams stuff up their high draft picks. Fremantle have done that for 30 years. It's objectively hilarious. But that doesn't mean we need to go back through the little record books of who was drafted where and say, ooh, move Chad Warner up 4 spots. It's a waste of time. It's stupid and it's pointless. I don't understand, first of all, why it's always unqualified losers to come out with these opinions. Like, shut up. I don't want to hear it. Stop talking. Second of all, it's such a vapid concept. It doesn't add anything to actual conversation around football when we're worried about who drafted where. Leave that to fans of the teams, average Joes who go and watch these players come through every day, to say, oh, we should have drafted player X instead of player Y. That's their thing to grumble about. Not having state-sponsored media and other, fairly major websites come out with redrafts. It's stupid. It's pointless. It's arguably the biggest waste of time in football, and there's a lot of those. And I don't know how my time's going, so we're going to end it there. Redrafts, stop them. I hate them.
Not bad, not bad. Yeah, 20 seconds left to go, so that's not too terrible, Jesse. That's not too terrible. Yeah, I've always wondered about the redraft because I see those those guys on the AFL website. They're always doing these things, and I do often wonder the same. I'm glad you actually brought this up because I'm sure you're not the only person who's wondered this. Because literally, what's the point? Like, what's that going to actually change? Nothing. And what would it have changed? We don't know. You redraft someone else further up the list, and guess what? They stuck there too. What are we doing? Getting a DeLorean, going back in time? No, we're not. Jesse, I agree with you. You got me fired up about it, and I don't really care that much.
I think the bit that annoys me the most about it is you can do top 10 players from the 2019 draft, for example. That's fine. But then to amalgamate that into the actual top 10 draft picks is pointless because if the player that was drafted pick 20 was so good that the team at pick 5 needed to draft him because they needed to fill that void in their team, they would have just done it. Like, it's just the most vain, bizarre, and it's almost going to be total eclipse of the dart too because it's just so silly.
Well, let me.
If you do any of these, please stop. I don't like it.
And if Jesse doesn't like it, you have to stop. Those are the rules. They've always been the rules. Cut it out. I'm going to jump into another one. I'm going to bring up something else that's been bugging me this week, and that is
Ooh, here we go.
Yeah, I've got a couple. One of them is not too bad. I'll get the first one off my chest right now because, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, it pisses me off. And that's umpires paying marks that aren't marks just because the person, jumped on somebody else and it was nearly a specky. But then they put it down and they pay the mark anyway. Oh, shit. Is Jesse timing me? It says zeros. You've given me a whole bunch of zeros, Jesse. Am I out of time already?
No.
Jesus.
I was just winding you up, man.
Fair enough.
That's payback for you being a flog about Sydney before.
Well, I mean, listen, just toughen up. But that's one thing. I just like, if they don't mark it, they don't mark it. Easy as that. It doesn't matter how fancy the jump was. Don't pay it. But no, that's not my thing. My thing is the adjudication of, and it's the Dodgy Punts podcast. We're going to have a jab somewhere in here about the umpires. It's the adjudication of the deliberate or insufficient attempt calls in the games now. We're at the point where it's basically a last touch the other team's ball. That's kind of where it's getting to now. Like, if you're the last person to touch it, guess what? It's like basketball. If I'm the last person to touch the ball in basketball, Jesse, it's your ball. That's where AFL seems to be heading, because I saw one today in the Eagles and Richmond game where it was a stoppage. Someone put a boot onto it, like literally touched it with the top of their toe to get it out of congestion. The ball bounced towards the boundary line. There were two players there, and the umpire called it insufficient attempt. People are being tackled, slung in a tackle and get a boot on the ball, which is what they're meant to do, by the way. They can't hold on to the ball because then that's holding the ball. But they chuck a foot on it and it goes down the line and then bounces out, and it's insufficient attempt. How are you supposed to actually keep that ball in if you're being slung in a tackle? Insufficient attempt. What the hell are you talking about? It just, it bugs me. It bugs me so, Jesse.
It's very rare that we completely agree on this show, Liam, but we do here. I hate this rule. I've hated this. I've hated this interpretation of this rule since the moment it came in. I don't like the umpires getting to be Minority Report pre-crime division detectives on the field. It doesn't make any sense to me. But more importantly, I actually don't like the deliberate out of bounds rule in general. I think it's a stupid rule. I think if you're that desperate to penalise people for using the boundary, just make it last touch. Or just get rid of the rule itself and do it how it was 20 years ago. I don't think it speeds up the game. I don't think it was brought in to stop obvious time wasted, but you've got to remember who was coaching around then. Like Neil Craig, Ross Lyon, career time wasters when it comes to that stuff. That's not a go at them. That's just how they coached.
Sure.
They coached to win games. Chris Connolly too, throw him in there as well. Like, that's just what it was back then. And that's fine. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but they didn't want that anymore. So in comes deliberate out of bounds. The game's changed and evolved, and some ways better, some ways worse. But I don't think this has been necessarily an improvement specifically to insufficient intent. I really don't like that at all.
No. It's kind of like in the AFLW, they have the lasso rule, which is essentially that. Like, if you kick the ball and it goes out and no one else touches it, I think outside the 50 arcs, then it goes the other way. All right. I'm not saying that we should bring that in. I actually prefer the idea of just scrapping it away altogether. Or just bring it back. Not even 5 years ago, they were good at adjudicating those. Like, if it was absolutely just blatantly obvious that they just handballed it directly to the boundary line, they paid it. And if it wasn't that, they didn't. It was as simple and as clear cut as that. And then all of a sudden, and that's because insufficient came in about 5 years ago. Insufficient intent. Yeah, and it's just and now the rule sucks even more. Yeah. As the years have gone on, it's just become more and more of a joke, in my humble opinion. Anyway, Jess, we must move on to the games. We've been talking for so long, which is fine, but we're heading into the match reviews. That's what happens when when we're away from each other for a week, Liam, and we're stuck talking about football on opposite sides of the country. You're on the better side of the country. I'm not. God. But that's okay. We make it work. We make it work, man. We make it work. But we're going to move into our games of the round. And we're going to start with Thursday night footy. The Melbourne Demons 8-12-60, defeated by Brisbane 12-10-82. That scoreline is very, 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 very generous to Melbourne, because Brisbane barely played in the fourth quarter because they'd already done well and truly enough to get the 4 points in the bag. I think Melbourne kicked it maybe four goals in the last quarter to make that only a 22-point margin. It could very, very easily have been a lot more. Brisbane, are they getting the roll back on? Are they starting to show signs of what we expected of them this entire year? Have they shaken the hoodoo? Are they back into it? What's going on?
Well, I think this game absolutely solidifies a point that we made both last week and also in the preseason preview about how equitable this competition is from anywhere between second through to about 12th or 13th. I certainly didn't see this coming. Brisbane usually have all the metal at the MCG of a dead toaster, but they've come out, they've got the game, they've won the game. I know it's 22 points. It should have been at least double that.
Yeah,
they dominated this game. They'll be delighted. Melbourne, I think they'll be really disappointed with themselves as a playing group.
Yeah,
because they were comfortably outplayed, I felt.
Yeah, no, they were. It wasn't even like they'd never looked in the contest at all the entire night. I think I mentioned last week that I went to this same fixture last year, Melbourne versus Brisbane at the G, and the first half was very similar. And I remember texting you during the game going, "Nah, it's cool. I've seen this story before. Melbourne will come back and win this by 4 points, a goal like they did last year when I went and saw the same thing." They did not. They did not do anything of the sort. They looked tired. They looked like they'd gathered too hard last week during gather round, and then they got back to Melbourne, and they were very, very sleepy. That's how it looked. Now, I do have a question for you, Jesse. Last week, you were talking about how you were interested to see how the Ben Brown effect would take hold of this game. Any thoughts on that?
Flopperoonie. Big old flopperoonie for Ben. And yes, we're adding fart noises into the podcast now because that's how I describe Melbourne's performance, frankly. It was pretty bad. I don't know what to make of it because I don't think Brisbane are top 4 material this year.
Well,
off the start of the season, because I just think back to how they played against us and how vulnerable they look.
Well,
but then they've come out and absolutely dominated here. So
yeah.
You know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the best part is we don't have to be committed this early in the season. You know, Brisbane have had some shockers. They've now got 2 wins on the bounce. Oh, God. That was so bad.
If you guys don't know what I'm talking about with Matthew Richardson, go check out my story on the Dodgy Punts Instagram because it was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Anyway, I digress.
Outstanding editing from you too, might I
Thank you, man.
We'll give you a plug for that. It was good editing.
Thank you. An old man learning how to use Instagram. Oh, look at me go.
You are old.
I can do a reel now. Fantastic.
Well, I've actually had people tell us we need to make a TikTok account, so I might put you in charge of that.
No, definitely not. No, I think I said this.
Purely for the comedy of seeing how you do it.
No, I said this at the start of the season. I will not do a TikTok. Jess, if you want to do a TikTok, mate, you're in the generation. You can do it. I'm not touching TikTok with a 10-foot pole. No, thank you, sir. No, thank you, sir. Anyway, we digress. Are you going
to start doing the renegade?
We digress. I don't know what that is. Don't know what that is.
You are so old. How are we friends?
I don't know. Honestly, I asked this question. I'm like, I got to meet Jesse. How old is he? And I tell him how old you are. And they're like, why are you hanging out with him? I'm like, well, it's work. You know, you meet people through work. It's all good. Don't even worry about it. And also, we love footy. We love talking footy. What do you want us to do? Jesus Christ. All right. Anything else to say?
Let's talk some more footy.
Yeah, let's talk some more footy. We're going to talk more about Melbourne. Brisbane. We're going to move on to the next game, the game of the round.
No, I've had enough. This was a very good game. I've had enough talking about Melbourne, Brisbane. That game just made me really cross. A game that didn't make me cross, though, from a footy tipping perspective, was the Western Bulldogs versus Essendon Liam. Tell our lovely listeners and viewers the score.
Western Bulldogs 9-13-67 defeated by Essendon 15-6 96. You know what, when you said tell them the score then, I nearly went off to that, you know, right on the tip of my tongue that used to play back in the day when they showed you the score for the other game and they said, if you don't want spoilers, look away now. Oh, that just hit me right in the nostalgia just then. Sorry. Bulldogs
I'm not that young. I remember that at the back end of Channel 10 when they had it for the last breaths of their rights.
Good boy. Yeah, 9-13-67 Bulldogs defeated by Essendon 15-6 96. Now, you like this game, Jesse. Tell the people why you like this game.
just because I was right about the Bulldogs. Really?
Yeah.
No, but look, in all seriousness, this is two teams who are at the same level, and let's not kid ourselves here. These two teams are not finals teams. I think deep down they both know that, and so they're able to come out and actually have an even contest. And for the most part, that's what we got.
Mm.
For the first half or so, I could have gone either way. Essendon looked good, and the Bulldogs looked good. It kind of ebbed and flowed a bit, but ultimately, the Bulldogs are not the side that they want to be. And this is a team that was in the grand final 2.5 years ago. They didn't feature in September last year. They lost an unlosable game against Fremantle in 2022.
Mm-hmm. The Bulldogs were in a grand final 2.5 years ago?
2021.
The Bulldogs
They were beaten by Melbourne.
Were they really? God. All I remember is their 2016 win. That's literally all I remember. Was that even 2016? Who could be sure anymore?
It was.
I didn't know they made it again. That's crazy.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
It was in Perth.
Oh, that one. Okay, fair enough.
It doesn't feel real because it wasn't at the G, but no, they definitely made it. They were definitely there. Legally, they existed, but if you look at the Bulldogs since then, they out in the elimination final against Fremantle in 2022 in a game they should not have lost at just about any stage of that.
Nope.
2023 Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
That board backs Beveridge. They keep him. They say go again, Luke. And here we are in 2024. Now we'll get to the ladder in a second, but they haven't really impressed me. I know it was close last week against Geelong. I understand that. I know they beat Gold Coast, but I know they beat West Coast, who are not winless anymore. How good for them! But
they're not winless. That's true.
They're not winless. But I don't think the Bulldogs are going to play finals this year, and this is going to be looked back as another era for them with missed opportunities, much like kind of 2008 to 2010. Although I'd argue that this one hurts more because 2008 to 2010 was a stacked Geelong team, a stacked St Kilda team, a very good Hawthorn side. You know, that was full of quality. And they were the fourth wheel in that whole thing for that 3-year stretch. They were always the fourth best side, yet they were always a very good side. So that's a bit, I think, easier to swallow. And I'm not a Bulldogs fan, so, you know, Bulldogs fans let us know. But I think that'd be easier to swallow then compared to, I mean, they got beaten by Melbourne, who haven't featured in the grand final since, in that 2021 grand final. Since then, you've had Geelong thump Sydney in the grand final. Neither team has been back in September. Granted, it's going to be one more year. But that was then Collingwood, Brisbane. Now, that's 6 individual teams in the last 3 years. That's an open competition.
Mm-hmm.
And this Bulldogs list, I think, you know, could make the case that they should have been up there for more than just one of those 6 appearances. This looks like we could have another set of 2 teams this season, the way it's going. So and they won't be a part of it. So that's a real problem for me. I think the Bulldogs have made some big mistakes with their recruitment. We've talked about Roy Lobb plenty. But, you know, if you're going to bring in a player of Lobb's quality, you have to give something up to then free up the areas of the field that you need, because there's been bizarre decisions this year. Ballydale was a sub on Friday night. That was really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Daniel and Jack McRae have been in that the team. These are best 22 players, and they've not exactly been bad, I don't think.
No.
It just seems like there's a lot of a lack of surety down at Whitten Oval at the moment for me. It's a lack of real concrete direction of this is where we are now as a team. These are our KPIs, and this is when we'll next be in the finals, top 4, grand final, etc. There seems to be a real sense of, well, are we just selling the farm and rebuilding, or are we going to try to push again? Much like I thought I was going to be Geelong this year.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to have gone again. The Western Bulldogs have now kind of slid into that position of, dunno, when I thought they'd be in a place to start detonating and rebuild, yet there seems to be a real reluctance to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well said. I mean, I won't add too much more to that. You've just said everything that needs to be said about the Bulldogs this year. It's pretty clear. I mean, but like you going back to the game itself, you said it was quite an even contest throughout. I mean, you've got 22 scoring shots to 21, and a 5-goal loss. So Essendon took their chances when they had them, were much more accurate, and in the end got a pretty comfortable win, which is good for their numbers. Essendon keep beating the teams around them. They're doing what they've got to do. So can't be too sad about that as a Bombers fan. Moving right along to game number 3 of the round. GWS 11-14-80 defeated St Kilda 12-7-79. A nice close 1-point game. There's quite a few close games on this Saturday, actually. Oh, boy. So this game was interesting. Now, you said in last week's preview that this could have been the biggest margin of the round. It would have been absolute flogging. Flogging? Yep. It was going to be a frogging, Jesse. Flogging.
Ribbit.
Ribbit. Now, it was actually looking like it was heading that direction. GWS in that first quarter looked on. Like they were running. The pressure was so high. And it was that GWS that I actually love watching this year. It was phenomenal to watch. And I thought, I'm going to sit here and watch this for all 4 quarters just to see how bad this gets for St Kilda. Because I was expecting it. Based purely on that first quarter and the toe that GWS seemed to be in, I thought, geez, they are on here. However, as per the 1-point margin, something I've seen this round in particular. Well, this year GWS seemed to be able to play out all 4 quarters. They got just slower and slower and slower as the game went on. It's almost like whatever happened in that first quarter took literally everything out of their tank, to the point where when St Kilda started coming back, I think they kicked 5 or 6 goals in the last quarter. So it wasn't close. It actually wasn't a close game. And then they looked like they were running through treacle, like they were moving in slow motion. They couldn't do anything. And St Kilda just kept chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. And I was thinking to myself, holy moly, how can they throw this away when they were playing such good footy for such a long period of time through this game? But they absolutely died in the A and were very lucky to hold on for a 1-point victory. That said, it's still fun watching GWS when they're flying. It's very nice. It's really nice. Credit to St Kilda though. They charged back. They took that little carrot dangling. They ran for it and they nearly got it. Not quite though.
Not quite.
Not quite. Jesse, anything to add about this game?
I think you actually surmised that really well.
Oh.
No, I think you surmised it really well. I will add on this. I wouldn't panic about GWS. They've had 25 scoring shots. Sometimes they just don't go in the right goalposts. Realistically, they could have smashed St Kilda.
Mm-hmm.
I think St Kilda. Mm-hmm. I think they're also in the Essendon, Western Bulldogs, Fremantle clump of teams this season. If they make finals, I think that's a surprise. Nothing I've seen here really changes my mind on that.
Yeah, fair enough. Hopefully, I'm looking forward to GWS hopefully bouncing back a little bit stronger this week because they've got a pretty big game coming up. Now, this one for me, Jesse, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but holy moly, if this wasn't game of the round, I tell you what, Carlton 14-98, defeated by Adelaide, also no longer winless, 16-4, 100. That is the power of accuracy right there in a nutshell.
There's an old proverb, Liam, that I like to trot out, and it is the best games of football in the round are played at Saturday afternoon at Marvel Stadium, and that rang true in round 5. One of our favourite death slots gets up with a cracking game, and if you're Michael Voss or a Carlton supporter, it's honestly one of those games you just look at and you say, well, what can you do? I mean, for a team to kick 16-4, we know Adelaide have talent. We know there's a good side in there somewhere. So I think for Adelaide, obviously a massive confidence-boosting win. Contrast that Adelaide forward line versus the one that played against Fremantle a couple of weeks ago and against the Gold Coast before that. It's chalk and cheese. Mm-hmm. When they're firing, they're dangerous. That's the first time they've fired all season. And when you look at that, they've won a game.
I know, isn't that crazy?
They get the job done as a result of a firing forward line. For Carlton, I mean, they can't keep getting away with it, apparently. They lost this one. But again, it's one of those games where you just look at it and a team kicks 16 goals for. So, you're not going to win 22 games a season. Sometimes you've got to cop these. And as frustrating as it is to lose the close ones, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's one of those things where you just have to kind of lace up your boots, dust off your umbrella, and kind of get on with it, I think. But Carlton's still a very good side. They'll be in the finals. Adelaide, I think they're good enough to be competitive in finals, but they're just too far back right now.
Yeah, the start of their season has done them in pretty solidly. Like, the good thing about this game is that they didn't stop. Like, regardless of their accuracy, because they just didn't stop. Their pressure was immense. They kept going. They kept finding players. They looked after each other. They kept running. And when they got down, like, I think I texted you in the fourth quarter. I said, "Here we go. Here's classic Adelaide." They're doing the whole trick where they don't play the full 4 quarters, because Carlton kicked, I think, the first 3 goals of the last quarter, put themselves up by 18 points. I think it was 16 points. And then that's when I texted you and said, classic. Then I went out. I chucked the radio on while I was driving somewhere, and all of a sudden Adelaide were a goal down. I was like, hello, what's happened here? And they didn't stop. They didn't put the cue in the rack. They kept coming, which is really good to see from an Adelaide supporter's perspective. You got to love to see that. And getting a win away from home at Marvel against one of the top teams of the season, yeah, like you said, it's going to be a huge confidence booster for them. And it's always nice to see the Vibe Cup returning to form. All right. We'll save our game to the end. We'll get this other one out of the way first. Gold Coast Suns 16-13, 109, defeated Hawthorn 8-8, 56. See, maybe this is what it is, Jesse. I've had a thought. My 2 vibe teams this year, Adelaide, Gold Coast. Gold Coast definitely getting the better rub of it at the moment, right? But last week's episode, I said that my vibes had been passed on to Hawthorn after their really, really strong showing against Collingwood, right? And now here we are. Maybe I just don't give people my vibes. Maybe it's bad juju. Maybe I should just no one. My vibes are off everybody for the rest of the season. I just want to see good games of footy. But no, it is disappointing to see Hawthorn go from such a strong, solid performance against Collingwood to this. But it does scream of what you might see of a team on a rebuild. Like, the consistency is not going to be there. Yeah. And they definitely got pantsed. Let's be real, they got pantsed by Gold Coast, and good for them to be back on the winners board as well.
One thing I will say is I think they're starting to really build Heritage Bank Stadium as a fortress for themselves. It's still a work in progress for them at the moment, Gold Coast, but they're starting now to actually figure out what it means to really defend a home ground. And for interstate clubs, that's probably the one competitive advantage that you get in this league. Yeah. So if they can start turning, Heritage Bank into a vault, pardon the obvious
People First
pun.
Stadium, please, Jesse.
There's no, it is people, they swapped out the name. Well, that's not very nice. I can't make a banking pun anymore, can I?
Correction count on Jesse's. I'm going to get one back on you, Jesse.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Well, hopefully Gold Coast put their people first and continue to make their home ground a fortress. I said I couldn't do it. I was wrong. Self-correction, back even on the scoreboard.
Well done. Well played. Yeah, not too much else to say about this. Just a good win by Gold Coast. Disappointing for Hawks. Big game for them next week. We'll get to that later on because that's going to be a cracker, I reckon. It's going to be a cracker. All right, let's talk about it. Okay, deep breath in and out. Port Adelaide, 9-12-66. Defeating Fremantle, 9-9-63. Listen, again, this game was actually very, it was an even game throughout the contest, much like it was last week against Carlton, but for very different reasons. It was like stoppage central. First of all, there was a stoppages every other 30 seconds in this game. It was slow. There was no pressure. Neither team skills were particularly good. Neither team could have any forward 50 entries that were effective. Where they did, but it was very few and far between. This game was all played between the backs and the rebounds, and that's pretty much it. I don't think this was a very good game. Not the game that you would have expected out of these two. It would have been nice to come away with the 4 points. Obviously, really Pierce did did old mate Dixon in. He was getting frustrated like an old Viking on the sidelines, getting all fired up and fuming out of his ear holes at the coach because the coach was getting up in his face. He wasn't effective. Lukey Ryan had a great game. Look, your favourite, Josh Tracy, actually had a pretty decent game as well.
He did. For the 10 minutes he turned up.
Oh, come on now. Be nicer to Josh. He did more than 10 minutes of work. You know that. No, I'm not talking about those 3 goals.
He might get to a goal a game if he keeps that up. Good on you, Josh. You're almost doing the bare minimum as a key forward.
No, but he pushed up the ground like you Lord Tabs all the time for pushing up.
I know he crushed his packs. I know. That's enough.
Yeah.
I hear it every week that he crashes packs. I don't need to hear it.
But he clunks them too. He can take some marks. Anyway, but I'll get your thoughts about this. Trademark. I'll get your thoughts on this one, Jesse. What are your thoughts on on another close Freo loss? Should I start the 2 minutes?
I'm going to need about 20, I think.
Oh, no.
No, look.
Condense.
It's every fan base when they lose close games goes on the thing of, oh, we always lose these, or oh, it's this again. But this is a problem for Fremantle, and it's a psychological problem more than anything. Obviously, last week against Carlton, there was, we'll call them extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
But this week, they did not have a plan in that final 5 minutes. And that was the sense that I got. It was a sense of, we only have plan A. The only play I actually saw try anything different was Aish, when he went twice in front of Solder and took 2 taps. The second time, Willie Rioli was awake to it because he got away from him the first time. But why is there a complete unwillingness to actually play close footy?
Yeah.
As opposed to just play your roles. Now, we actually disagreed on something, Liam, and I want to talk about this because I thought an excellent piece of umpiring happened in the last 45 seconds of this game.
Okay.
And it was a free kick to Charlie Dixon on the wing for tunnelling. Now, I actually thought this was one of the best calls I've seen all season.
Okay.
Because it's actually a correct decision. You can't take someone's legs from under them when they're going for the ball. I understand the argument, what else is Jackson meant to do? Sure. But that's actually a correct interpretation of the rules. So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
You weren't happy about it though, were you, Liam, at the time?
Well, at the time when I was watching the game, because I was out last night. I watched this game. I started watching it at 10 p.m. So by the time the end happened, I was pretty tired. But from what I saw, here's what I saw when I was watching it. I saw Charlie Dixon run through like a flying kick like it was Toby Green circa 2019. Like, his little, and all I saw was his foot coming through, Lukey Jackson standing there doing this, like cowering a little bit, Charlie Dixon tumbling over the top of him and then giving the free kick away. That's what I saw. I didn't see Luke running into that. I just saw him flying towards Luke Jackson and then him toppling over Luke Jackson. And how many times can I say Luke Jackson in a sentence? But that's what I saw. Well, I didn't see him moving back into it, but you saw it differently. That's fine.
Yeah, I think it was a really good call. It's a problem for Fremantle now where that's 8 points dropped from very winnable positions.
Yeah. Granted,
we probably went in thinking they wouldn't beat Brisbane and they wouldn't beat Adelaide. So, swings and roundabouts there. Sure. They are 3-2. They are in touch with where they need to be from a finals perspective. But here's the problem now, Liam, is that you compare the end of round 3 after Fremantle beat Adelaide to the end of round 5 losing to Port Adelaide, and think about the teams around them that have started to wake up a bit. Mm-hmm. Brisbane, Collingwood, etc. They needed to cash it on this start and go 4-1. Close games, you split them on a 50-50 ratio when you're accounting for these things, I think. So, 4-1. They needed to be 4-1. If Fremantle wanted to play finals, they need to be 4-1. I think it's going to be very hard now, especially if Saturday night doesn't go to plan, for them now to start building results. And make no mistake about it, Saturday night very well easily could not go to plan.
Well, we'll talk about that game in a little bit, the other game that happened today as well. But I'm not getting the alarm bells ringing just yet. I think we've had a better start to the season than we expected, which is fantastic. We'll see where everything heads in the next few rounds. We'll definitely need to get a couple more wins in the next few rounds leading into the bye to have a chance. But I'm hoping I'm hoping that, these two close wins show that we can contend with some of the teams who are expected to be at the top, which should hopefully bolster us a little bit. But we've got to sort the forward line out. That's priority number one. We've got to sort out the entries into the forward line, because Pearce and Luke Ryan can't keep doing what they do without having huge bags kicked against us at some stage. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. But look, we'll see. I do agree with you, though, with the fact that we didn't seem to have any urgency in those last little bits of the game. It just seemed like we were playing the same game plan. I agree with you there. I think that was a little bit frustrating watching it from my perspective. I was like, you guys know there's a minute left, right? You guys know you're down by 2 points, right? 3 or whatever it was. Like, hustle. And yeah, there wasn't anything. Man. Anyway, anything else to add before we move on to Sunday's games, Jesse?
Not from a Fremantle perspective, from a Port perspective.
Oh yeah, Port.
Minus the loss against Melbourne, Port know how to win. They know how to win games of football, and they will continue to do that. They've benefited from a couple of games at home. That's fine. That's just how the fixture works sometimes. But hopefully for their sake, this gets them really, really up and going now, and we can start seeing these better sides squaring off in that top 4 quadrant of the table, because that's, I think, what we want as football fans. We want good sides playing good football. And although it wasn't pretty for Port, we know they can play pretty football. So they get the win, they get the 4 points, they move on. They are a serious finals contender for me.
Yeah, and that's one thing. And just quickly back onto Freo again. That's one thing they did really well, was stopping Port's corridor run, which they've been doing all season. Freo did a very good job at limiting that, which I think kind of added to the low scoring, slow kind of affair of the game. But if they can get that going again against other teams, yeah, they're going to be a absolute danger. High voltage. Let's move on to Geelong 21-13, 139, defeating North Melbourne 10-4-64. I won't be having you lambing me when I'm singing Electric Six, my friend. Do not do that again.
Look, I don't even know what that is.
Of course you don't. Good music. How would you know?
Is that not one of those CD-ROM things you put into your Macintosh 80s to get it working?
They're called CDs, Jesse. Just CDs. Do you remember those? Those little round things you put into machines. They play music at you. Isn't it crazy?
No, because I have AirPods like an adult.
Okay, mate. All right. Oh, which one's that? Is that the Perth to Sydney coming in right about now?
No, I wish it was the Sydney to Perth and I was on it. I'll tell you that much for free.
Oh, dear. Geelong 21-13.
No, Sydney's a beautiful city. I'm sorry, this is very off topic. Sydney's a beautiful city. Have enjoyed my time here, but it's just too busy.
Yeah.
It's too busy. I told you. I don't like it.
I love the busyness. Give me the business all day long. Look, there's not much to talk about in this Geelong North game. Just recapping again, 21-13, 139 Geelong, 10-4-64 North. Look, I think that was just a team in really solid form, showing the minnows of the competition how it's done.
I actually saw a disproportionate amount of North fans get very cross about the game on social media. Okay. And when I say disproportionate, I mean there was probably more frustration about the result than I thought there would be, which I thought was quite interesting because, look, this is a hard one because I think certainly in recent memory for myself, Liam, you can probably speak more about this as a Dockers fan than I can actually. I'm talking about 2001 here. Mm-hmm. But there's not, I'm going to start this again. It's not very fun to lose every week.
No, it's not.
Fremantle have done that on and off for 30 years. But you know, when the floggings start, you start to get kind of used to that and just, it just is how it is. But North have been better than they were last year to me. Mm-hmm. They've been a better side than they were last year. There's more to be excited about. Are they just getting? Is it just a case of expecting too much too soon? I know it's hard when you lose by 75 points. Well, what was the expectation? Lose by 100. Honestly, at Kahumba, maybe it was, but I get the sense that now is not the time to be turning on North from within their own fan base. Liam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, while there has been a little bit of a decline in their progress, I remember we were quite excited about them in the first couple of weeks of the season. There has been a little bit of a regression in that regard. The last few weeks have not been very good. But no, I agree with you. Like, it's your team. you know what you know what North Melbourne is at the moment. If you're a North Melbourne supporter, you should know what North Melbourne is. And we all know that Geelong have a 4-goal advantage at Kahumba, which means that that's really only like a 50-point margin, which is not that bad when you think about it.
And it's legally true.
It's legally true. No, I think it's frustrating. Obviously, I think 2001, I think we won the first game of the season and the last game of the season. That was it. We didn't win anything else. But do you know what happened when we won that last game of the season? We had an absolute party. It was the best. You got to take those times when your team's not doing very well. When you get a win, rock on, party behind them. You're going to have a few years of downtime for North, and I know they're kind of into their second or third year of said downtime. But at the end of the day, like, you've got to see where they're trying to go. You can't do anything else. If you're playing Geelong, who's in form, very strongly in form, at home. Look, I had a lot of people I know at work who put money on Geelong winning by 90 to 99 today. Like, that's, people expected this result. So I'm not too sure why North fans would also not expect that result and try and take some positives out of it. I'm not sure if there were any, but you can try. Right?
You can indeed. And Liam, incredibly, every game that could have been won this round by an interstate team was won, because what happened in the final game of the round, Liam? Tell us the score.
West Coast Eagles 16-13, 109, defeating Richmond 10-10-70. Can you, Adam, and believe it? It has been a day for the Eagles supporters, and this is what I'm talking about. Eagles fans, when the siren went at the end, there was a raucous eruption of just like pure euphoric joy. And then Birds of Tokyo started playing and everyone left immediately. But that was so happy. So happy. Honestly, I thought they got rid of that song. It marred the experience for me. And I'm a Docker supporter. I was really happy for the Eagles. And then that song started playing. And I thought, Eagles, if you're going to be taken seriously, get your old song back. Birds of Tokyo. Far out. Anyway, back to the footy. No, huge win for the Eagles. I'm proud to say that I tipped them in all my competitions this week, and that's well done. It shows that I am a footy genius. We won't talk about the rest of the games this week, but for that one alone is worth.
No, we will not.
That one alone is worth its weight in gold.
Shut up, him.
Look, I know Richmond are down some players, but I think that kind of exposed their depth pretty severely today. West Coast made them look silly. West Coast ran rings around them. They found targets. Waterman had a great game, 6 goals. Harley Reid looked really good, like he's going to be a top 10 player already. Just joking. He will be a top 10 player at some stage in his future. I believe it, because based on today's game and how he was weaving and ducking through those contests, the kid's got a bright future ahead of him. He's looking really good.
Yeah, I'd agree. Big result for West Coast. Their fans definitely deserved it, especially the ones that have been going game in, game out over this season and last season. It's been a very tough run for them. I think this, for me, they've now ticked one of their 5 winnable games as a win, because you're probably only going to get wins this season against an injury depleted side, which was Richmond. Hawthorn, you got 2 games against Freo, and you got North. That's probably about it, realistically.
And you're only putting the derbies in.
Not to immediately rain on their parade.
No, and you're only putting the derbies in there because realistically, based on history alone, you just don't know what's going to happen in a derby. You just don't. You could be the bottom team. There's been years where Eagles are flying high, pardon the pun, and then the Dockers, who are down the bottom in the doldrums, sunk to the bottom and have beaten them. So you just never know what's going to happen within a derby. So that's why I think you've chalked up those 2 as potential wins, because, you know, it's a funny old game, the derby. It's a funny old game. What about Richmond? Danger signs now. They're not going to play finals. I think everyone knows that now. But any other real concerns from them, or is it just a case of once those players come back, should we ride as rain again?
Well, it is a concern because, and again, I don't want to rain on West Coast parade here, but you'd like to think that, A, they wouldn't be losing, even with a couple of key outs, and B, they wouldn't be losing by almost 40 points.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big loss in the grand scheme of things for the sake of, we have a couple of injuries. It's not like they've gone and played Port Adelaide or Sydney, who they beat a couple of weeks ago. That feels like a lifetime ago.
I know it does, right?
They didn't turn up to Perth and they were comfortably beaten. And West Coast honestly didn't really look like losing.
No.
Which I think is a big problem for Richmond. Which is a big problem for Richmond because West Coast have won games in recent years via just chaos. Just absolute unadulterated chaos. And that's the first game they've probably controlled and won since early 2021.
Like, honestly, I texted you in the first 15 minutes of this game and I said, it's not looking pretty for the Eagles because Richmond came out firing.
Yes, you did.
I did. And then I've learnt one thing this round is I text you too early. I should wait to see how things play out before I start texting you about things. But at the start, it was 27-0 in very quick time at the start of the game, and so to see Eagles have that ability to bring it back, not only bring it back, but then start dominating the game and win the game by a considerable margin, like 39 points. It's 6 goals. That's a huge win for a team that's been
it's no joke.
No, beaten all around the park for the last couple of years. That's big for them. So, regardless of our interstate loves, it's nice to see them get a win, and I hope they've got it out of their system. All right, let's go on to the tips. We're going to do it really quickly. Jesse, you went Essendon, I went the Eagles. That's where we differed all week. 4 a pop this week puts me on 32 and you on 31. I'm still holding that one on you there, but not a great week for tipping, and next week's looking to be even trickier. But before we get to those, a quick look at the ladder. It's finally happened. The undefeated teams are now actually on top of the ladder and not sparsely scattered around the top 8. Giants holding up in number 1 spot with the Cats in second, both undefeated still. Then you've got the teams with 4 wins: Power, Swans, Demons, and Blues in that order. Dockers still in 7th. The Suns, way in 8th. Told you it happened.
Vibes are
back. And Bombers are in 9th. Same amount of wins, 3 wins as those other 2 teams, but just outside on percentage. Your 2-team wins: Lions, Bulldogs, Saints, and the Magpies, still looking pretty dire. Crows, Tigers, and Eagles all on 1 win. Crows and Eagles getting to the party. Fantastic. And then you got Hawks and Kangas rounding out the bottom of the ladder. All right, Jesse, that's the ladder done and out of the way. That leaves one more thing for us to do, or 2 more things. One more thing for us to do, which is round 6. We're into round 6 already. How crazy is that? Where are we beginning?
We're not beginning on Thursday, Liam. Why would we have Thursday night footy? Why would we do that? We don't get Thursday night footy or nice things anymore.
Do we not?
Why would we keep... No Thursday night footy. Just no.
Are you sure?
Yes. No. Stupid AFL app. It tricked me. Although, to be fair, I actually wouldn't count this as a game of football either, so really we are starting on Friday regardless.
I actually wasn't too sure if that was a bit you were doing, but hey.
This is my anti-vibe cup.
Anti-vibe, yeah, that's fair. You're doing this part.
So Thursday, I know, that's why I'm speaking. That's why words are coming out of my mouth, dickhead. Thursday night, we have St Kilda versus the Western Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium, a.k.a. the only place that could host these 2 teams playing each other. Marvel Stadium, where they belong. Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. kickoff or bounce down local time. I'm going to say a draw.
Yeah.
And if I win, I get 10 points.
No. Absolutely not.
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely.
If you tipped,
I once won a footy tipping competition with that rule.
Did you? It
was about 2010. I tipped a draw.
Yeah.
I think it was a Richmond game. I tipped a draw in, and they drew, and I won the competition based on that. It was late in the season.
Based in round 23, you're down by 9 points. You made up a rule saying, if I tip a draw and it's a draw, then I get 10 points. And everyone's like, yeah, all right, Jesse. Were you like 13 years old in a family competition? My God.
I was about 7 in a family competition. I tipped the draw and I won. So, You know what?
Well, guess what?
Talented from the start.
We're playing adult rules here. And no, if it's a draw, we both get a point. That's how it works, Jesse. Are you tipping the draw still?
I don't really want to tip either. No, I'm tipping Western Bulldogs.
Okay. Interesting. we're gonna differ right off the bat. And here's the thing: who the hell knows how this game's going to go? It could. Who knows? So I tell you what, just off the bat, I'll take St Kilda. And yeah, I mean, I think I've made plans for Thursday night because I saw who was playing, and I thought, yeah, I can get the replay of that.
Why is this the Thursday night game?
Who knows?
Like,
who knows?
Serious question. Why is this the Thursday night game? Because I looked down the fixtures, and I can see about 5 better options.
Dude, there's some bangers this week. There's some bangers.
This is a Saturday afternoon death slot. This should not be a Thursday night footy game.
Oh well. What do you do? What do you do, Jesse? Yeah, I'll take Saints. You'll take Bulldogs, and we'll move along
to a game on Friday night I actually think is going to be quite good, in my humble opinion, and that is Adelaide at home at Adelaide Oval taking on the Essendon Bombers, who are currently flying overhead. I'm gonna start with Adelaide here in Adelaide, but this should be a good game, and this is one of those ones where I'll go with the caveat of, well, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm just wrong.
Yeah, no, I think if Adelaide can play like they did last week, which is always what we say, and then the team never comes out and plays like that the following week, which is why Essendon will probably win. But then again, they also had a win, so who knows? Adelaide for me as well. I think this round in general is going to be quite tough to pick across the board, so. I will also go with Adelaide. Home ground advantage is the only reason I can really think of.
Hi, Liam. Why is Collingwood versus Port Adelaide on at 1:45 p.m. at the MCG on a Saturday?
Okay. This is where I'm going to jump on board with you on this scheduling debacle, because I saw this as well and I was like, I'm sorry, what? This is a primetime game and it should be on primetime spots.
Yeah.
I don't understand, Jesse. I'm not going to pretend to understand. But hopefully it's a lovely day out in Melbourne.
Hopefully. I'm going with Port Adelaide here.
Okay.
They've got the momentum. They're going well. They'll get Collingwood off the bye. I know they're not brilliant at the MCG, but I think they've got enough in the locker here to win and keep their roll going. So I'm going with Port Adelaide. I'm surprised they're not the favourites on bookmaking websites. So that did intrigue me.
I'm not surprised at all. It's Collingwood.
You're not? So you're quite cold on Port? That's true.
I'm not cold on Port at all. I'm saying you're playing Collingwood at the MCG, the reigning premiers no less. They don't lose, Jesse. That's not what they do. Two wins this season.
All the weeks this season they have.
Look, we're going to differ again. I'm going to go for the Pies.
Ooh.
I think I'm going to go for the Pies because I reckon that they are off the bye. I don't think they're going to be tired. I think they're going to have a bit of a new rejuvenation for the rest of the season. They kind of need it if they want to try and contend their flag. They've been kind of lackluster so far this season. So I think this will be a bit of an exclamation point on this. It's a full stop. This is the new sentence. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Why not? Collingwood.
I don't know if you could hear it, but every time you started talking that sentence, there was a train outside that was blasting its horn, and I actually think it was trying to tell you to shut up.
Well, I shall do so, Jesse. What's the next game?
Another good game, Liam, on Saturday. We have Carlton versus GWS at Marvel Stadium on Saturday afternoon. This should be an absolute belter of a game. An absolute belter. Who are you going with, Liam, and why?
Again, it's another coin toss. And I think big size from me because I don't know. I think you've got Carlton coming off a pretty disappointing loss. They're going to want to fire up and get back to it. You got Giants who just scraped over against St Kilda. I reckon they'll adjust some tactics to kind of mitigate a lot of their end of game dead legs.
Yes.
I'm going to go for the Giants to remain undefeated.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to go, Jesse. The Giants for me.
I'm going with Carlton. So we have 3 different now.
Yeah, no. I was looking at this fixture and I was going to be like,
this could be the make or break round. Yeah,
sure is.
We've been waiting for this.
Yeah. One tip either way at the moment is easy pickings. But if one of us gets like 4 up, well, that changes a lot.
We have a game on our hands.
We have a game on our hands. That's right. Do we have another good game?
Speaking of games on our hands, Two games on Saturday night. I think both are good for different reasons. The first one's good because it's two good sides, and that is Brisbane versus Geelong at the Gabba. This is always a game that seems to turn up. We had the miracle on grass between these two teams at this ground.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm going to say 13 years ago.
Oh, I reckon it might have been longer, but anyway, go on.
This should be a cracking game of football. I won't be able to see it. That's a shame. Not live, at least. I'll catch up on the replay on Sunday. Surely just forward this to me on Thursday afternoon as like a preview. I just watch that instead of watching the Bulldogs versus St Kilda.
Yeah, sure.
Is that an option, AFL? But look, if that's not an option, I'm going to have to watch the replay on Sunday and watch Geelong continue their hot start to the season with a win at the Gabba.
Yeah. Have Brisbane won at the Gabba this year? One game. Again, what the hell?
Have they? No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
Not won?
They won. Oh. They won at Gather Round and they won at the MCG.
Well, do you know what, Jesse? Let's keep the theme going. I'll jump on Brisbane, and we'll keep going. I mean, look, good win for them last week against Melbourne. Are they starting to show some form? The form that they should be playing? Maybe, maybe if they are, then they're going to go back home and turn it back into the place that they win all the time. So I am going to go with Brisbane, handing Geelong their first loss of the season, and Brisbane to continue rolling up towards the 8 as they do.
Our final game on Saturday is a game that I think holds great significance for us West Australians, Liam. That is West Coast hosting Fremantle at Optus Stadium, Saturday Night Lights. It's after the Quokka, which is stupid fixturing by everyone involved. Stupid fixturing.
After the Quokka, the horse race.
The Quokka is the richest race in Western Australia. It is run on Saturday afternoon. It'll be run at about 4:30-ish p.m. And then it's a mad hour scramble for those who are going to the game from Ascot to Burswood, where Optus is. No, it's not too far, but it's just poor scheduling. It's two of probably the biggest five to eight sporting events in WA in a year happening on the same day. And I know, Liam, you probably aren't as au fait with the racing scene and couldn't probably comment on that, but the crowd at the Quokka last year was one of the strongest that West Australian thoroughbred racing has had in a very long time. Everything is indicating that it's going to be the same this year. It should be a full house for Ascot these days, which is probably about 15,000 odd. And then you're going to have a stampede to Optus. So it's a bit of a shame with the scheduling. I know there were plenty of people that I know that wanted to go to both and kind of have to pick one or the other, which is a shame because obviously for the West Australian economy, you want, your best events patronised. Alas, it's a derby that probably hasn't had the anticipation around it, even weeks out leading into it.
Well,
but in saying that, I think this is going to be this is a derby that I think goes into with a lot of unknown because you've now got a West Coast side that has won, has some exciting young pieces, and has nothing to lose, versus a Fremantle side that is probably psychologically beat up after the last fortnight, who in the first derby last year only really won because West Coast hamstrings imploded in unison in the third quarter. Fremantle should win. I'd be disappointed if we didn't. But I do go into this with a bit of a dark cloud hanging over my head, Liam.
Yeah, that's every derby, man. That's every derby. Every derby happens, and both the Eagles and Dockers fans are going into it going, oh, God, I hope we win. Eagles played really well today. I think we also have a really young and exciting team as well. I think the game plans are really different. I'm hoping that Frio's slightly more seasoned team will get the job done relatively easily. That being said, easy mean comfortable. I don't want this to be I'm talking like 3 or 4 goals maybe. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like it was at the end of last year. No. But Freo should get the win.
We wrap it up, Liam, with 2 games on the Sunday. We'll try to speed through this to keep it under 90 minutes. Sydney versus the Gold Coast at the SCG. Liam, who do you have and why?
Sydney. because Sydney. And I think Gold Coast will challenge. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually won, to be honest with you, because Gold Coast seems to pop up at the most random times this year. But I think Sydney will be too strong at the SCG. I think they'll be too strong for Gold Coast.
Yep, I'd agree for all the reasons listed above. Sydney for me. And last and absolutely least, we have North Melbourne versus Hawthorn in our first true spoon bowl of the season. Round 6. Neither team has won.
Draw.
Liam, who do you have and why?
God. Like, here's the thing. Both these teams were showing such promise a few weeks ago, and then both these teams have kind of capitulated pretty hard the last couple of weeks. So now I'm not too sure. I'm going to go North. I'm going to make myself look like a fool for putting Adrian Barrich in as tipping Hawks for the spoon at the start of the year. But that's fine. The season's still young. But I'm going to go North to get the win here.
There are 8 games this round, Liam, and we have 5 different. I'm going Hawthorn. I think they're closer.
Well,
and I think they've got just enough to get over the line here. But it'll be fascinating to see Clarkson versus Mitchell. That's always an interesting duel, I think, for me. A real master versus apprentice. But that covers round 6 ahead, Liam. We've made it through almost all of the episode.
That's right. You didn't hear Richmond or Melbourne there because they're the final buys of the opening round shenanigans. They're done. Yes. This is it. Once this round's over, all the buys are done, and then in 4 or 5 weeks, we can look forward to the actual buys proper. Yay.
The highlight of the calendar.
Highlight of the calendar. Now, do we have time for a dodgy punt, Jesse?
We do. I am going to give you character of this one, though, Liam, because I think you've been extra dodgy throughout this episode, and frankly, it suits your character the most.
Thank you, man.
Be
I
the
appreciate
dodgiest
that.
of punters. While you figure out what you'd like to waste your money on this week, I will once again thank our viewers, listeners, audience members for tuning in to the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast. You can find us at Dodgy Punts on Instagram, on YouTube, soon to be TikTok once I convince Liam to get that up and running. Make sure you leave us a review on Spotify. Stop shaking your head. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Leave a like, leave a comment, let us know. Tell your family, friends, pets, crazy neighbours, strangers in the street. Make yourself the weird guy on the bus that rambles on and on, but this time about the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast. Liam, have you got a dodgy punt for us?
It's the dodgiest of punts, my friend. So basically, this round is one of the toughest to pick, right? So normally I do like some sort of crazy 10-leg stupid thing, which, to be fair, no, I was going to say I nearly got a couple this weekend, but I got to stop saying that because it's still a loss. One was a void from the game today, and I would have probably got pretty close if it wasn't for someone getting injured. How rude. But here's what I'm going to do. Jesse, all the teams that I picked this week.
You really got the short end of the stick there, Liam.
I did. It's just rude. All the teams that I picked this week: Saints, Adelaide, Collingwood, GWS, Brisbane, Fremantle, Sydney, North. That is my dodgy punt. Get onto it. I'm going to get 9 right this week in my tips. I'm going to get 9 right in this bet.
Are you?
Yeah, 100%. I'm calling it now. You're gonna be down by like 5.
Hold on.
Shut up, Jesse. 8.
Hold on. No. You're not getting away that easily. Liam has declared on the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast he'll be getting 9 tips correct in round 6. We can already declare it a loss. You can save yourself your $5. You don't even need to have a bet because he's already got it wrong.
Mate,
you were 9 right.
You were trying to go for 18 tips earlier this thing with a fucking draw. So get on my back about it, why don't you? Crikey Moses.
And it would have been closer than half of yours.
That's probably true. 58-25 if you follow me into the power of the light of tipping with my perfect 8 tips. 58-25. Get on board. Don't do it. Gamble responsibly. Probably do something funnier than that. Not funnier, smarter. Smarter is the right word. Anyway, let's wrap this bad boy up, Jesse. Go on.
We've had some fun, Liam.
And we had some fun considering that,
It's interstate fun.
Interstate fun. You're over there. I'm over here. It's the power of the internet. We'd love to see it. But that's it. Jesse, have you wrapped us up while I was doing the dodgy punt, didn't you?
I did. I thanked all of our viewers, listeners, and audience members. Told them where to view us. So we will see you again in a week's time for another installment of the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.